Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset, wherever you are listening from. We're really glad you're here. And we are going to have a guest who we've had on before. We get to have him on again, and we're going to grill him really good. I want you to remember that a few weeks ago we talked to Walden Hughes, and Walden is a collector of old radio shows. He's been very involved with organizations that help promote the hobby of old radio shows and old-time radio, as I do. And I thought it would be kind of fun to have him back because there are a number of events coming up that I think are very relevant to talk about, and so we're going to do that. So, Walden, welcome back to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
Michael, it's been such a long time. I'm glad you invited me back.
Well, I know it's been so long. Well, so tell me, let's go back again. You know, radio, people talk about the golden days of radio or the time of old radio. When do we say that officially ended? Although I think it went beyond it.
I feel like September 30th, 1962. I think the style changed a little bit. I'm probably a romantic somewhat. I love the style of old time radio. I love how it sound.
Yeah.
I think in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the studios and the theaters that they used sounded great for radio, and it disturbed me. And I bet you have the same feeling, Michael, that when you get new productions and new studio, it just doesn't sound right. I feel it's the equilibrium is not quite the way I love old time radio. I think old time radio is prime rib. I think a lot of new productions out there that they release their podcasts and things on a weekly basis, I think they're handicapped. They just don't have the budget to really create and build a studio the way I think it should be to have it sound just natural and just right. And
well, I think that's part of it, but I think the other part of it is that people today don't seem to know how to act and create the same kind of environment with their voice that old-time radio actors did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and into the early 60s. We had Carl Amari on several weeks ago, and of course, one of the things that Carl did complete recreations of all of the Twilight Zone shows, and even some of those they sound sort of forced. Some of the actors sound forced, and they haven't really learned how to sound natural in radio like some of the older actors do.
Yeah, and I know Bobby Call did it for basics. I get thrown off when what he did, have the Hollywood Stars remote in, and he had his stock company of Chicago actor, and I could hear the equilibrium just not quite right. That bothers me. I don't know if the average person picks up on that. And you're right. I don't know if the style of acting that they teach in film and TV, radio acting different in a lot of ways, and you gotta, as you point, it gotta be realistic to the environment, and actors don't get that for radio. And,
and you talked about the last day for you of real old radio was September 30th, 1962, and we should probably explain why that is.
That is the last day CBS had Your True Johnny Dollar and Suspense as the two main keys of old-time radio, and that was the last day of old-time radio out of New York. And us diehard collectors just sort of think that's when radio died, per se.
Gunsmoke and Have Gun Will Travel were gone.
Right. And the soap operas ended in November 25, 60. Yeah. I like soap operas. I know a lot of people do not, but there's something campy about it that I like. I would I prefer to listen to some of the old soap opera than I do some of the new productions. And because of the acting style. But
I think there's a lot to do with it that makes that the case. And I think you're absolutely right that so many things are different. But at the same time, radio did sort of continue, and there were some good shows. Zero Hour, the Hollywood Radio Theater that Rod Serling did later, and of course NPR did Star Wars. And
I like that. I thought Star Wars was done well.
Yeah, I think that was done pretty well. And
what do you think of CBS Mystery Theater, honestly?
CBS Mystery Theater, I thought that generally CBS Mystery Theater had some good actors, and they did a pretty good job. I can't complain too much about that, and it was on for a long time.
But what do you think of the script, though?
Well, part of the problem for me in CBS Mystery Theater is, and I'm sure it was a cost issue, there weren't very many people in most of the scripts. There was like 2 or 3 or so, and that was a problem. And I think that the scripts suffered because there weren't more people in the scripts to really make it, again, sound pretty natural. And I think that was a problem.
Yeah, Hyman Brown really knew how to crank it out.
Oh, he did.
And so I really think in a lot of ways, let me just hang up the phone. That way we don't get this phone. Call back later. But anyway.
That was Walter's phone, folks, not mine. My phone's unplugged.
But I think it has a good, solid B production, the scripts, and I think the scripts are what hampered. You couldn't knock the actors. I thought the actors with Mercedes McCambridge and all of those were terrific actors. But you're right. Sam Dam wrote a lot of them, and things like that. But
I think it would have been nicer to have more people in the scripts. But I understand that probably was more difficult to do just because of union and scale and the costs. But gee, I think it would have made a big difference in the shows. But Hyman Brown really knew, as you said, how to crank them out.
Yeah, that's why in some ways I think the series Radio Theater of the late '70s is a terrific series. It just didn't have the financial backing to make it last longer than the 2 years I was on.
Now, one show I really liked on NPR later was Alien World, which I thought was good.
I'd never heard of any of them, so you think it was good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm very happy with Alien Worlds. There were some actors from radio and early television and so on. Hans Conried, for example, was on some. Yeah, I thought Alien Worlds went really well. I guess we're going to have to get you some and get you to listen to them. But
it's interesting. I just got done taking a 8-week course on entrepreneurship for disabled people. And my idea is to pitch that we should be doing audio theater as a podcast. I think if it's big enough, it can attract national sponsors. And if you look at the numbers, everybody podcasting, 135 million people in the USA download a podcast once a week. Revenue of $2.46 billion.
Yeah.
Worldwide, 5 billion people download a podcast once a week. Revenue of $4 billion. And so if you had a podcast with well-known stars, I think you could get that 1% of that market, and then you could generate between $24 to $40 million in revenue a year that would easily be a good financial model. And that's what I'm pitching. But when I went to the court, they asked me what to analyze, what's wrong with my, what obstacles I have. And one of the things I put down is, besides the studio we talked about, and the acting, which a really good actor, actress, everybody, like a Beverly Washburn, can pick up a script and knock it out of the park right away. Most actors are not able to do that. That's a real gift, as Michael was pointing out. But the other thing, most scripts are written for film and TV, which is a eye medium. And a radio script is written for the ear, and I have produced enough. The ear is faster than the eye. If you take like a TV script and or a book and read it out loud, the mind will wander. It has to have a faster pace for the ear, and I don't think more people notice that when they're analyzing a script.
Yeah. But you're sort of treading around the edges of something else I think that is fascinating that we can start to talk about. One of the things that has occurred some over the past few years, and whether it be with the podcast or even just with the mechanisms we're using today, is there are some attempts to recreate some of the old radio shows, and you and I have both. Well, we have to get you acting in one of those shows, Walden. But I've acted in the shows. Walden works behind the scenes, and there are a number of people who have been involved with them, and you really can tell some of the good actors who performed in old radio, as you said, Beverly Washburn, Carolyn Grimes, and others. Carolyn, of course, is Zuzu from It's a Wonderful Life. And by the way, she's going to be coming on Unstoppable Mindset in the not too distant future. But the point is that you can tell those people because they've done it and they're very comfortable with it, and they know how to make it come across really well. So, for example, you're the president of the Radio Enthusiasts of Puget Sound. Now, you're down here in Southern California. How did you work out being the president of Reps?
One of my closest friends in the hobby is Brian Haygood. And Brian's been one of the big movers and shakers of Reps over the years. And when the founder, Mike Sprague, decided to step down, they were looking for new people to run Showcase back in 2007. So Brian asked me, because I'm the one that has the contacts. You know, I'm the one booking guests for YUSA and Reps and Spurvac. I'm sort of the go-to person with contacts and phone numbers, everybody. And so I just wound up doing the co-produced Showcase back in 2007 with Brian. So that's been one of the things I wound up doing. I produced almost 39 2, 3, or 4 days events of old time radio around the country. So
tell us about Showcase.
Showcase, it will be September 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st. It's a big event for us, for Reps, and we got funding thanks to Ford Culture and the state of Washington to do this, and it's free. You can go to repsonline.org and RSVP and come. And people that you get to see this time around are Beverly Washburn from Star Trek,
and Linda Behrman from shows, and others.
Linda Behrman, a good, solid voice actress, and also is a coach. Carolyn Grimes, as you mentioned. Margaret O'Brien, of course, you know Margaret from Oscar Award winner from Meet Me in St. Louis. Gigi Perot. And she goes back to the 40s and 50s and did the Betty Hutton TV show. Tommy Cook and Life of Riley, a radio show. Ivan Curley and Bobby Benson. Bill Owen, who you had on, ABC TV announcer, author of The Big Broadcast. Ron Cocking, he and his late wife, Gloria McMillan, ran acting school for children. Bill Ratner.
Gloria McMillan, of course, is famous for radio.
Right, Armis Brooks. Bill Ratner from G.I. Joe. Bill Johnson, who does Bob Hope around the country. John Provost, who is Timmy and Lassie. Chuck Dougherty, the second announcer for Sergeant Preston of the Yukon King and Discover the Beach Boys. David Osmond from Firesign Theater. Phil Proctor from Firesign Theater. John Iman, who was from the TV show Lassie. And there was Larry Albert and John Jensen, the big band announcer, John Laurie Gaspin, and Dan Murphy, used to be the program director at KIXI in Seattle. And so there's going to be a great weekend. We'll produce close to, I think, 18, 19 radio recreations that's still negotiating. And we'll have several interviews and panels. It's all free. So you can go to repsonline.org. And that's one of our two major events. The other major event is the Christmas show in December, the first weekend in December. I'm hoping Mike can make it up that weekend.
Yeah, I was hoping to be able to come to the showcase. And one of my favorite shows, and Walden and I had talked about doing it, is Richard Diamond, Private Detective. And I actually asked to be cast as Richard Diamond, but then a speaking engagement came up. So unfortunately, rather than being in Washington, I am going to be in Minnesota. I'm sorry, in Pennsylvania, speaking. So I won't be able to be there. But we'll do Richard Diamond. That's going to be a fun show. One of these days, we'll do it.
We put it aside, so when Mike can do it, we can do it. So, but no, we're really blessed to have the financial grants to keep audio theater live on a nonprofit basis, and that's a great point, because not every group's had that financial abilities right now to do that, and it's so expensive around the country to do it in terms of airfare, hotel commitments, and just meeting room costs. I mean, for people who may or may not know, when you go to a hotel, a live event now, a lot of hotels expect that that meeting room needs to generate at least $10,000 of income per day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money. So we have a place that doesn't do that, and we're able to produce that. And so Rep definitely focus on the live audio theater part, and also has a large library, like 33,000 shows I heard we have for people can download, and we're also aggressively buying discs and things to add to the library. And I remember a Spurvac I part of, and I'll tell you some of the latest news in that when we talk into that topic. But it's just, I think old-time radio is in really good shape at the moment.
You mentioned Larry Albert, and most people won't know, but Larry Albert's been in radio for, 40 years?
Mm-hmm.
And has played Detective Harry Niles that whole time.
Yep.
And he's also Dr. Watson on Sherlock Holmes. Again, there are some really good professionals out there, which is cool.
Yeah.
Who understand and know how to talk in a way that really draws people in, which is what it's all about.
Absolutely. And considering Larry and a co-founder, they run Oral Vision, so the after of Imagination Theater, so they carry the banner up in Seattle, and it's pretty amazing what they're able to produce.
Yeah. Now, in addition to the showcase and the Christmas show that Reps is going to be doing, Reps also does some other shows, don't they, during the year for like veterans and others up in the Seattle area? Tell us about that.
We I started that idea down here at Spurvac in 2017. The Long Beach Veterans Hospital, they still have the original theater, Mike, that Jack Benny and Bob Hope did their shows in front of the vets at Long Beach. And I know you and I have radio shows from the Long Beach Veterans Hospital.
Yes. And
the stage is still there. It's the biggest stage I've ever seen, Mike. The seating area is mobile, so that way they can bring patients in who are in wheelchairs or whatever, or in bed. They still have the 1940 film projectors and booth up above. If they want to run movies in there, and it's just a remarkable feeling to be on the stage that Bob Hope and Jack Beatty did a show, and then the famous broadcast where Ralph Edward,
Truth or Consequences.
yeah, and Hubert Smith, who was a patient at the hospital, and so in 2017 we did It's a Wonderful Life, and we had a gigantic crowd. I think it was almost 200 people came to that. And I was for the public and people inside the hospital, and it was an exciting event to have a deluxe version of It's a Wonderful Life, which was the 70th anniversary of the broadcast.
Right.
And so I decided to take that concept and take up to Seattle and start performing shows inside the VA hospital system in Seattle. It took a while. It's hard to get into the VA system to put on shows because you got to talk to the right people, and you got to get a hold of PR, and not always easy. So I found the right contacts, and then the state of Washington has a grant for veterans or veteran family member to be in shows, and so we're able to get some funding from the state for that. So. And then we're also encourage them to come to Showcase in September. So, but no, that's another program we got going for reps.
Someone who I unfortunately never did get to meet, although I heard a lot of his shows, and he helped continue to bring memories of radio to especially the military, was Frank Brzee, who was around for quite a while. And then he was also on Yesterday USA a lot, wasn't he?
Sure was, from 1993 until 2018. So he had a good 25-year run on YUSA. Frank and I co-host the Friday night show for many years until he passed away in 2018. So from 2002 to 2018. Frank was an amazing guy. He owned his own radio station in Santa Catalina Island when he was 19. He had one of the first tape recorders in Hollywood, so Bob Hope would hire him, and he would record all Bob stuff at Paramount Studio and set the radio station and travel with Bob to record his radio show. He also was Jim Hawthorne producer for television. Frank wound up developing board games. Pass Out sold 6 million copies, and The Newlywed and The Dating Game. He had a company that got gifts for game shows on television. He also set up a brother in a company to monitor when commercials were run on TV. Frank also produced record albums. He had Walter Winchell record the life of Al Jolson, met with Jimmy Durante, had Jimmy Durante do an album, Eddie Cantor. And so Frank is one of these great entrepreneurs that was able to make a lot of money and spend a lot of it on his love for radio. He was a substitute for Little Beaver, for example, on Red Ryder. So, and he loved doing the show The Golden Days of Radio, which started in 1949. And from 1967 on, it was part of the Armed Forces Radio Service, which was heard on 400 stations. And I'm the caregiver, caretaker of all that items. So I have all the shows and getting them transferred and putting them on YUSA. And Frank wanted to make sure his entire collection was available to collectors. So we want to make sure things were copied and things like that for people to enjoy. But no, big part of old-time radio in a lot of ways, not behind the scene a little bit. Wasn't a big name person during the golden days of radio, but afterward wound up being a major person that carried the fire torch for old-time radio.
I know we talked about it a little bit, but talk to us about Yesterday USA. That has been around quite a while. And in general, for those who don't know, Yesterday USA is an internet radio station, actually two, if you will. There's a red and a blue network of Yesterday USA, and they both stations broadcast old radio 24 hours a day. Although conversations and up-to-date conversations are interspersed, it still primarily is a vehicle for playing old radio shows, right?
Yeah, been around since 1983.
How did it start? Yeah.
Founded by Bill Bragg. Bill started the largest communication museum in the world back in 1979 in Dallas, Texas. And he had a film exchanger, and there was a TV station called the Nostalgia Channel. And they had these films of old TV shows, but they didn't have the media to transfer it. And so they contacted Bill. Bill agreed to transfer the film. He asked what it is in exchange for him. They said, we can give you an audio channel on satellite. And they gave that to him, and so he tried to decide what to do. So he started to broadcast old-time radio over satellite. And he was over the big C-SPAN satellite until, into the 2005 era or so. Wound up being the audio subcarrier for WGN. Got it high in 2000 at the third most popular internet broadcast site in the world behind the BBC and CNN. It's down around, the last I saw, around 44. That's not too bad with 15,000 stations online.
I remember. It was probably like 1998 or so, maybe 97. We were living in New Jersey, and I was doing something on my computer, and I don't even remember how I discovered it, but suddenly I found Yesterday USA. And at that time, Yesterday USA was one channel, and people could become DJs, if you will, and play old radio shows. You could have an hour and a half slot, and every other week you updated your broadcast, and they put on your shows at different times during the 2-week period. But it was a way that, again, a lot of people got an opportunity to listen to radio, and I'm sure it was very popular.
Yeah. It's still, the last I saw, we still get 40,000 to 60,000 listening hours a month. Which is a lot, because some people might listen to 7 minutes, some people listen to a half hour, and all that accumulative, it's almost 60,000 hours a month. So that's a lot of hours that people are accessing, and there's something nice about being it live. I don't know what you think, Mike, but doing something live is pretty special, and that's the nice thing about what Yesterday USA can provide. And we can talk, take calls, and then, in the old days, you had more and more people talk about old-time radio and nostalgia, but a lot of new people don't have those memories, so we might do some other things to still keep it interesting for people to talk about. But it's still, the heart and soul is still old-time radio in a lot of ways, and we're definitely the flag bearer, I think, for new people to find old-time radio.
How did you get involved with it?
I became aware of it in the early 80s when Spurvac mentioned it in his newsletter. And so I knew it was out there, and I called, and Bill returned my call and said, I would like my cable TV company to play it. And I contacted my cable TV. They couldn't get to that channel. It was on the satellite. So they put big band music on there instead, on the community board. And so at the same time as you, about 1998, I had a good enough computer with a good enough sound card that I could pick up Yesterday USA. I was aware of it. It started on the internet in 1996. So I started to listen, and then I would sort of call in around 2000. They would ask a question, Bill and Mike, and not really know the answer. So I would quickly call and give them the answer, then leave. Eventually, they realized that I knew Kitty Callan, the big band singer of the 40s and 50s. They asked me to bring on and do the interview, which we did September 17th of 2000. And then they asked, could I do interviews on a regular basis? And so one of Kitty's friends who I knew was Tess Russell, who was Gene Autry's Girl Friday, who ran KMPC for the audience. That was the station with the stars that played down the road, easy listening music.
Golden West Broadcasting, and that was the station Gene Autry owned.
Yep. And I think everybody in the music business must have owed Tess Russell a favor. So she hooked up, she signed up, she gave me booked 17 guests for me right away. From Joe Stafford to Tony Martin to Pat Boone, just Patty Page, just wrote them all out. So I had a major start, and then I started to contact people via letters, celebrities and things. And I think that's a really good batting average, Mike. I had a success rate of 20%.
Wow.
Which was a person that I had no contact with, that I could turn into a guest. I always thought that was a pretty good batting average.
Yeah.
And I got Margaret Truman that way. I mean, she called me and said, Walden, I forgot I did this radio show with Jimmy Stewart. She did Jackpot, the screen director of Playhouse. And
right. We
talked about her time on The Big Show with Tallulah Bankhead, and said a big help with Fred Allen to her. We talked about, she hosted a show, NBC show called Weekday, which was the weekday version of Monitor with Mike Wallace. And she talked about how Mike had a terrible temper, and if he got upset with the engineer, she would have to grab his jacket and pull him back in his chair just to try to cool him off. And so we had a great time with Margaret O'Brien. Oh no, well, of course Margaret O'Brien
Truman.
later, but Margaret Truman.
Right.
But I always thought that was a pretty good batting average, getting 20%. And then in those days, in the early 2000s, a lot of celebrities were willing to interact with through the website with you. And so I did that. So I booked hundreds of celebrity interviews over the years, and so it's been I think an important part. What I do is trying to preserve people's memories.
Right.
That way we have the recordings.
And so, how long was Bill with Yesterday USA?
I passed away in 2019. So Bill was from 83 to 2019. The last 10 years or so of his life, though, he had Alzheimer's and dementia, and so
yeah, you could tell he was sounding older.
Yeah, and he wasn't behind the scenes. He was really erratic in a lot of ways. So it was Kim and I wound up, his wife and I wound up running the station for the last 10 years behind the scene. Okay, Bill wasn't able to do it, and so I would be the one handling the interaction with the public and handling the disc jockeys, and Kim would do the automation system and do the paperwork. So she and I pretty much ran the station.
And now you do it.
I do it, yeah. And so I think Bill always had in mind that I'd be the one running the station in a lot of ways. And thanks to the listeners, we've been able to pay the bills enough to keep it going. I would love to generate more income for it.
Well, tell us about that. How are you doing the income generation and so on?
Most of it is through a live auction that we have in November. This year will be on Saturday, November 22nd. And people donate gift cards or items, and people bid on it, or people donate. And that money we basically use to help pay the monthly bills, which are energy, power bills and phone bills and things like that. And so, which is a remarkable thing. Not every internet radio station has a big enough fan base to cover the cost. And so a lot of the internet stations you see out there, everybody, the owners sort of really have to pull money out of their own pocket. But YUSA been around long enough, it has enough loyal following that our listenership really kicks in. I mean, we built a brand new studio here with the audience donating the funds, which is pretty remarkable, to do that.
Yeah, you got the new board in and it's working and all that, and that's a good thing.
It really is.
Well, I have been a listener since I discovered YUSA. When we moved out to California, for a while I wasn't quite as active of a listener, but I still worked at it as I could. But then we moved down here, and then after Karen passed, it was easier to get a lot more directly involved, and so I know I contribute to the auction every year, and I'm going to do it again this year. So, when
you were actively listening to YUSA, did you listen to the old time radio collection still quite a bit when you were working and traveling all the time over the years? Mike?
Yeah. I did a lot of times, and still do. I listen to some internet radio stations, YUSA among them, when I travel, just because when I go to a new hotel, sometimes I can make the TV work and sometimes I can't, but also sometimes finding the stations that I want to listen to is a little bit more of a challenge, whereas I can just use my smartphone, my iPhone, and I've got a number of stations programmed in. The only time I have had a little bit of a challenge with some of that is when I travel outside the U.S. Sometimes I can't get direct access to some of the stations because of copyright laws. They don't allow them to be broadcast out of the U.S. But mostly, even there, I'm able to do it. But I do like to listen to old radio when I travel. Typically not on an airplane, but when I land, yes.
Yeah. Because I think that's one thing that the internet taken over. I think a lot of people who grew up listening to the radio enjoy the uniqueness of radio station had. I don't know if you see that today, but I think the internet have replaced that.
Well, somewhat. I've seen some articles that basically say that there is a lot more shortwave listening and actual radio listening to radio stations than there is through the internet. But there is an awful lot of listening to the radio stations through the internet as well. But people do still like to listen to radio.
What do you think how do you think podcasts have fit in? I mean, you've been hosting your own show. How do you think that fit into the overall consumer listening habit?
Well, I think that what's going on with podcasts is that, like with anything, there are some really good ones. There are a lot of people who just do something, and it's not necessarily really great quality. They think they're doing great, and they maybe are. But I think that overall, podcasting is something that people listen to when they're running, when they're walking, when they're doing exercising, when they're doing something else, running on a treadmill or whatever, a lot more than listening to a radio program that probably requires a little bit more concentration. But make no mistake about it, podcasts are here to stay, and podcasts are very dominant in a lot of ways because people do listen to them.
You think it's more of a niche audience, so you find your audience who are looking for that particular topic, and so they tune into their favorite podcast because they knew you might be covering that topic.
Sure, there is some of that. But going back to what you were talking about earlier, if you get some good audio drama, and I know that there are some good podcasts out there that do some things with good drama, that will draw in a wider audience, and that gets to be more like radio. And I think people like radio. People like what they used to listen to. Kids so much today don't. but they never heard they never heard radio, but by the same token, good acting and good drama and good podcasts will draw people in, just like it always has been with radio.
What I'm also noticing, Mike, are the days of the disc jockeys, are they somewhat gone? I mean, we grew up in an era where you had well-known hosts that were terrific disc jockeys that kept you entertained. And I don't listen to it too much because, for example, everybody, the easy listening big band era is pretty much not in the LA radio market right now.
Right.
And I miss that.
I miss it too. And I agree with you. I think that we're not seeing the level of really good radio hosts that we used to. There are some on podcasts, but again, it is different than it used to be. And I think some podcasts will continue to do well, and we will see how others go as time passes. But I think that we don't see a Gary Owens on radio anymore. No. We don't see Jim Lang or Dick Whittington or Whitting Hill and all those people. We don't see any of that like we used to. And so even SiriusXM isn't providing as much of that as it used to. And so,
what do you think AI is going to fit? I was listening to, I'm a sport fan, and Mike is a sport fan, so I like listening to ESPN and Fox Sports Radio. And I was listening to a discussion over the weekend that they are working, some of the media, to replace the play-by-play announcers. They're working with AI because they figure eventually that's going to be a cost to do away with all announcers.
I'm not sure that's going to happen because
I don't know. It doesn't seem like it could.
No, I'm not sure that will happen. I think that even if you look at the discussions about Audible and other organizations providing AI voices to read books, what people say, and I'm sure over time this will change a little bit, but, and I'll get back to the but in a moment, people say, I would much rather have a human narrated book than an AI narrated book. And the reason is because AI hasn't captured the human voice yet. You may have somebody who sounds like an individual person to a degree, but you don't have the same pauses, the same intonations, the same kind of thing with AI that you do with humans. Now, will that get better over time? Sure it will. But will it get it to be as good as humans? I think that's got a long way to go yet. And I don't think that you're going to see AI really replacing people in that regard. I think AI's got a lot that it can do. But I actually had somebody on the podcast last year, and one of the things that he said is AI will never replace anyone. People will replace people with AI, maybe, although that may or may not be a good thing, but nobody has to be replaced because of AI, because you can always give them other jobs to do. So, for example, one of the discussions that this gentleman and I had was about having AI when you have autonomous vehicles and you have trucks that can drive themselves, and so you can ship things from place to place. Keep the driver in the truck anyway, and instead of the driver driving the vehicle, the driver can be given other tasks to do so that you still keep that person busy, and you become more efficient. And so you let AI do the things that it can do, but there are just so many things that AI isn't going to do. And I don't think that AI is ever going to replace humans. The whole point is that we make leaps that AI is not going to be able to do.
Yeah, I think a good example is in the audiobook field. A really great reader can give you emotion and play the characters and make it realistic. And I don't know if AI ever going to reach that point to bring emotions and feelings into a reading of story.
Not the same way. And as I said, I've been involved or listened and watched discussions where people say, for example, I might use AI to read a nonfiction book because I'm not really paying so much attention to the reader and I'm just getting the information. But when it comes to reading a fiction book and when it comes to really wanting to focus on the reader, I don't want AI is what I constantly hear. I want a person. And I understand that.
Yeah. I think what you'll see AI especially take over the drive-thru when people go to a fast food place. I can see AI replacing the interaction and trying to get those things corrected. I can see that.
Well, maybe. On the some of that to a degree, but I think that people are still going to rule out in the end for quite a while. Well, in talking about all the different radio organizations, I know we talked about it a little bit last time, but tell me about SPURDVAC.
Yeah, I can give you some new updates. SPURDVAC, it's been around since 1974.
I remember when SPURDVAC began. A person who I knew who was a listener to my radio program, Jerry Hindigus, was involved with all of that. My problem with attending SPURDVAC meetings was that they were way too far away from me at UC Irvine to be able to do it. But I joined by mail for a while, and that was pretty good. But by the same token, it was there.
It was there, and SPURDVAC have honored over 500 people who worked in the golden days of radio. A lot of districts donated. They had the meetings and the conventions. Now we're evolving very quickly this year into more preservation work. So we have bought over $10,000 in computers here recently. We bought and we donated, actually, we won a prize, and the first laser disc turntables from Japan, which is over a $10,000 turntable. We'll be using that to help dub discs, and the board has just voted, and it's going to increase the board to at least 11 people next year. We'll have a carryover of the 7 board member, and we want to have new board members. So maybe you and I can talk about that, Mike, for you to be on for next year.
Sure.
Because we'll be definitely expanding the board with 11 more. And so I think it's going to be really strong in the preservation stuff because SPURDVAC got 20 to 30,000 discs that need to get out there. And with all the new equipment, it's amazing how old-time radio sounds so good today in terms of the new technology compared where I started collecting in the 70s, and I ran into a lot of even commercial stuff. It was really muddy in those days, Mike, and I bet you did too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a remarkable difference. SPURDVAC is planning to be at the Cherry Blossom Festival next April.
And what does SPURDVAC stand for?
The Society to Preserve and Encourage Radio, Drama, Variety, and Comedy.
Yeah.
And you can go to spurvac.com to join. You can go to repsonline.org to join. And we then mentioned Yesterday USA, yesterdayyusa.com or .net.
You can go there and listen away and participate in the auction, which will be coming up.
November 22nd,
which is very important to do as well.
But anyway, I really think old-time radio is in a really good spot, Mike. I think if it was for the internet, I don't know if we would find all the young people who are interested in it. I think it's been a double-edged sword. It knocked out a lot of dealers. They used to make money selling their tapes and CDs and everything. And I bought a lot. I know you did too over the years. But those days are pretty much done. But it found a lot of new younger people to find the stations or find podcasts, and they get to learn about Yesterday USA and Old Time Radio and all the different Radio Once More and all the different internet stations that are playing it, and so they get exposed. And I don't think that would have happened before the internet. So I think in a lot of ways it created a whole new listenership.
I am still amazed at some of the things that I hear. I remember once when somebody found a whole bunch of old Petri Wine sponsored Sherlock Holmes with Basil Rathbone and Nigel
Yep.
Bruce. They
Chris
were horrible.
Wimbesses.
They were horrible quality. Was it Chris who found them?
Yep, Chris Wimbesses found them. Yep, found them in a
And
bookstore.
and the quality wasn't good at all. But they were remastered, and they sound incredible.
They do.
And I'd
What
love to know
happened
how
was-
they do it, because I'd love to be able to do that with shows that I have and like to remaster them.
Yeah, what happened was, there were two writers, Green and Boucher.
Voucher, right.
And Boucher was a famous, the Boucher Con, the famous mystery convention that is named after him. And Dennis Green was an actor on radio, and he was also a historian. He knew everything about Sherlock Holmes. And so they created the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes based upon maybe a scene from a previous
Right.
story and just expanded upon it. And so when one of them passed away, the collection wound up in a bookstore in Berkeley, California, and Chris Wimbesses found out. And so there became a buying group led by John Teffeler, Kenny Greenwald, Dick Millen, Jerry Burling, and others, got in a bidding war with the Library of Congress. And they outbid and won. They paid $15,000 for the sets of Sherlock Holmes. And so, and because Jerry Burling was an NBC audio engineer and chief film engineer, he really knew how to dub. And so they did a terrific job, and then they decided to put out a record album on their own with the first two episodes. And then after that, they decided to market it to Simon & Schuster, and they decided to do small vignettes. They could copyright the vignette. These were like 3-minute introductions, so they would get Ben Wright, who was one of the early Sherlock Holmes, and Peggy Webbers and others, to reminisce or create little scenes to set up the stories. Because that way they could copyright that part. They couldn't copyright the show because they fell in the public domain.
Right.
But they wound up paying the estates of everybody anyway. But that's how they all came out, and they were hoping to do Gunsmoke. We talked to Kenny Greenwald and others, but that never came off. And but that's part of the remarkable thing that Carl Murray's done. He's been able to get into CBS, and I think he's working on NBC. And he licensed them, so he'll be able to get into the vaults and get more stuff out for all of us to enjoy. And that's an amazing thing that Carl does for the hobby, is to get new stuff out there that's been locked away for all these years.
I am just amazed at the high quality. I'd love to learn more about audio engineering to be able to do that, because I have a lot of recording I'd love to make a lot better than they are.
Yeah. Jerry Hindick used to use a software called Diamond Cut.
Okay.
And that was those originally was used for the Edison Soda records. And the guys who were interested, so they developed the software. And that's where Jerry Hindick, who did so much transfer work, that was the program he wound up using to create good sound.
Yeah, and did a lot of it.
Yep. Cedar is a software everybody. I think originally it's hardware, and I think originally it almost was a $50,000 piece of equipment
Hardware,
before 2000. Now it's gone to software base, and it's a couple of $1,000s. That's another program that people use to clean the disc and snap crackles and pop out of the recordings. So.
But it's not just the snap, crackle, and pop. It's getting the real fidelity back, the lows and the highs and all that. And you said, what was the one he used? Diamond Cut?
Diamond Cut, yeah.
Diamond Cut, yeah. But it's just amazing the kinds of things that happen, like with the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes and others. But
you also have good ears for that, because
Yeah.
I remember about 25 years ago, they were Sirius XM. Everybody has this stereo sound. I don't know if you would tune in. It has a certain ambiance about it, and there were companies that were taking old time radio and creating that same effect, and that just bugged me. I was so used to listening to old radio show in an analog feel about it, and when they try to put false stereo in the recording, oh my gosh, it just didn't sound right, and so they've gotten away from that. So a lot of new dubbing they don't have that, so it sounds terrific now.
Yeah, it sounds a lot better. What do you think is the future of the hobby?
I think more and more stuff is coming out. A lot of stuff that were with agreements to hold onto the material have disappeared because a lot of it is passing from generation to generation. And so I think over the next 10 years, you're going to see so much more stuff coming out. In some ways, that's sort of what you, John, Larry, and I do. We collect almost everything just because you got to make sure it's captured for the next generation. Right. Even though we might not be listening to it, there's so much stuff we don't listen to everything. But I think we're sort of the librarians of old time radio, so we try to capture all of it and preserve it on hard drives.
Yeah.
But eventually it'll go to a future generation. But I really think more and more stuff is coming out. I think with the Yesterday USA, more and more people will find it. And I'm hoping with creating new audio theater, I would like to reproduce the great radio scripts we have no recordings for. Like One Man Family, I Love a Mystery, all those things. That's sort of what I want to do. It's one of my goals. And I think it'd be great to hear stories that we've all collected that we wondered about, and to get audio production behind some of these scripts. And I think it's in very good shape. It'll all come down to money, Michael, as you know.
It will. But I also think that it's important that we, as we're recreating the shows, that while we can, we have people who understand what we really need for actors who are going to be recreating the shows, are able to find the right people to do it, or we train them how to do it. I think that's so important. I
think so. I think you find a lot of young people who like theater, who are not necessarily radio fan. If they're radio fans like Brian Henderson and people like that, they become really good actors because they love to listen to the shows ahead of time.
Yeah.
Beverly Washburn does the same. She likes hearing the original performances. That way she gets a feel for
Me too.
the show. And I think I think Larry does it that way. And you might not necessarily want to copy everything, but you got a benchmark to work from, and you sort of know what was the intent.
When you say Larry, which Larry?
Larry Gassman does it that way.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And I think that's a great help to study and listen how people did it. Because I think a lot of old-time radio, it's like the prime rib. It was the best of the best of old-time of radio drama. And it's a great way to learn the craft by listening to it and absorbing it.
Well, if people want to reach out to you and maybe learn more about Yesterday USA or Reps and just talk with you about radio, how do they do that?
They can give me a call at 714-545-2071. That's my studio number for the radio stations. A lot of times I can, I'll pick it up and talk to you on air, off air. They could always drop me an email at Walden Hughes at yesterdayusa.com, and happy to answer. You can always call my cell phone at 714-454-3281. You can chase me down over at Reps at repsonline.org. Don't forget forward to me, or Spurvac at SPERDVAC.com. Or you can even get a hold of Michael Hingson. And Michael.
Yeah, you can always get a hold of me, and people know how to do that, and I will get them in touch with you as well.
You bet. So,
and I'm glad to do that. Well, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is a little bit different than a lot of the podcasts that we've done, but it is so important to really talk about some of these kinds of concepts and to talk about old radio and what it still adds and contributes to today. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to me, Michael H.I. at accessibe.com. That's MICHAELHI at accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com. Love to hear from you. Wherever you're listening, please give us a 5-star rating. We value that a lot. And I hope that you'll go listen to yesterdayyusa.com or .net. And again, on both there's the Red and the Blue Network, or repsonline.com. And we have a lot of fun. Every so often we do trivia contests, and we'll take hours, and a gentleman in New Jersey and his wife Johnny and Helen Holmes come on and run the trivia, and it's a lot of fun. And you're welcome to add your answers to the trivia questions, and you can come on and hear and learn how to even do it through the chat. But
Mike is with us every Friday night on YUSA too. Everybody,
and I get to be on every Friday night, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love you to help us further enhance the whole concept of old radio shows. So I want to thank you again, and if you know of other people who ought to be on the podcast, Walden, of course, you as well, as you know, please introduce us. We're always looking for more people to talk to us about whatever they want to talk about. So I want to again thank you all and for being here. And Walden, thank you for being here as well.
All right, Mike. I'll be talking in a little while.